Hello and welcome to the FSF podcast. I am Tim. I am your host. I'd like to welcome you to the show that is made by nerds for nerds. Now, our guest today is a filmmaker in his own right, but he's also caused a lot of attention to come his way because of some of the things he's done with some of the Disney Plus Star Wars releases. Now, he's worked and recut the Book of Boba Fett along with a partner on that one. He took on the Obi-Wan Kenobi show all on his own. And he's also recently recut the Ahsoka show. Now, these all have been cut down from a series into a movie, one standalone movie. And so it's kind of a neat cut. There's been some rearranges, there's been some colors, some shaping changes, all kinds of different stuff. We're going to get into all that, but I am very excited to welcome filmmaker Kai Patterson to the FSF podcast. Welcome to the show, Kai.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
Excellent. So, now we had you on the show back some time ago when during the Obi-Wan series, after you had just come out and you had released your cut. And now one of the things I loved about the Obi-Wan cut was that you got rid of a lot of the fluff. And by the fluff, there was the chase scenes. And although it was important to know that some of that stuff happened, we didn't need to watch little Leia get chased through the woods for a half hour.
Sure.
And through the market for another half hour and in super slow motion. But I thought you did a really good job of kind of taking some of that and adjusting how the story was laid out, and so it made a little bit more cognitive sense, I thought. And I thought I think you've done the same thing here for the Ahsoka cut, and we're going to get into that in just a moment here. But before we get into any of that, I was hoping that you would, for those who may have missed our Monday Night Live interview with you, that you would kind of go through your background and tell everyone how you got into filmmaking and why filmmaking is important to Kai Patterson.
Yeah, totally. I think it'll be interesting to see if my answer from the other podcast is similar. But I have always been into filmmaking since I was very, very young. I remember when I was 5 years old, I was convinced that I was going to be a paleontologist because I loved Jurassic Park so much. But then,
Gotcha.
as I really started to analyze what I liked about Jurassic Park, it was the storytelling, and I found myself watching like the behind the scenes of Jurassic Park like over and over and over again. And I just loved how you, as a filmmaker, you could, transport people into a world that is unreal but still feels so real. And so storytelling has always captivated me from a very young age. And then, my dad was in, news production, so he had access to like editing softwares and stuff that he let me try out when I was a kid. And I would, record home movies, and I would make my siblings act in them and stuff. And so I've just always been doing creative stuff with filmmaking and visual effects. And I remember playing with my dinosaur toys and putting them closer to the camera so that they looked really big. And so I was always just experimenting with that kind of stuff. And I was always kind of known as the movie guy in all of my like circles and classes and stuff like that. But in like high school is when I started to kind of do actual short films. And then in college, I produced some of my favorite short films. And then just ever since then, I've just been trying to expand, my craft and keep practicing. And fan edits happen to be one of those things that was another way for me to continue to explore storytelling, as well as, get better at the craft of storytelling.
Okay. So a couple questions from your answer there. Do you remember what your first short was that you made? Do you still remember that?
I do, yeah. It's I don't know if I still have it in like a digital format or anything, but I think I was like probably seven or something, seven, maybe 6 or 7, and it was called The Thing, and classic, and I
Oh
had
yeah.
my sisters acting in it, and it was about like, I don't even remember. I think it was like some scientist let something out, and it was stalking me and my sisters, and we like filmed we lived in an apartment complex, and there was like a little like kind of grassy area, community area, and
Okay.
I like pretended that we were like out in the forest and getting stalked by something. Yeah, it was very dramatic.
All right. Very cool. Well, the thing is a classic name, and it did release a
Yeah, and
thing.
then
So
like after that, after I exhausted my resources with my sisters not wanting to be in my films anymore, I transferred over to stop motion animation, and that's when I was just using like my Star Wars toys to do little battle scenes in stop motion, and Lego sets and stuff like that. So those were my earlier films.
that's actually really cool, especially at that age to think about going to a stop motion film, because that's a very intricate and a lot of
Hmm.
work has to be, step by step posing, you know. Um, yeah, because even a short on that is hours and hours of work for,
Oh yes.
even a 10-minute movie.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, and I was doing it where like I was using a camcorder, so I was literally like pressing record, like for one frame, I'd be like beep beep, and like then move to the next frame, and that way I could like rewind the tape, the mini DV tape, and then I'd be able to watch it back like through the camera too. So I didn't even need editing software, so that was really fun for me to do. And yeah, when my like sisters were out, on summer break, going to different camps and stuff like that, I was like at home by myself, just hours and hours and hours of stop motion stuff.
nice. All right. Now here's another question I have for you, Kai. And the second one I have, I'm actually going to save that for one of my future questions because I think it fits better there. So we'll see if I remember it by then. All right, but here's a question I love to ask anybody who's even involved with anything remotely Star Wars adjacent. Now, obviously, you're a fan of Star Wars. You've recut Ahsoka. We mentioned the Obi-Wan, the Book of Boba Fett. Um, but my question for you is, when did you get involved in the Star Wars universe, and what does having your mark on a Star Wars as a film, as a fan edit, even, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't remember a time in my life where I didn't know about Star Wars. My aunt was a huge fan of Star Wars. She had all the books and everything, and my mom also really loved it too. So I was introduced to Star Wars very early on. So I can't remember a time that I didn't have Star Wars in my life. I remember some of my earliest memories are me just like playing the original trilogy over and over again on VHS,
Mhm.
and probably wearing out those tapes so much. So it is really insane, that I guess I have kind of left a mark on the Star Wars community, which has just been such a joy, honestly. I love connecting with other Star Wars fans, and it is an honor and a privilege to, I guess, be categorized in like the history of Star Wars, and maybe I'm tooting my own horn too much there, but but it is really special that something that I hold so dear to my heart is something that I have been recognized on the street for. So like it is, it is kind of reached that point where maybe I have left a little bit of a mark on Star Wars, and that is more than I could have ever hoped and asked for.
Okay. Now, when we talked last, like I said, this was right after the Obi-Wan series. I asked you what was your favorite out of the two, and I believe you said the Obi-Wan because that was the one you had just worked on.
Out of the two, oh, of Boba
uh,
Fett and Obi-Wan,
yeah,
or
yeah.
yeah.
I think I believe that was your answer. I'm trying to go off memory right now, so that might
Yeah,
be a
I
little
think Obi-Wan
wibbly
also
wobbly.
was just like the one that kind of blew up in a way I had never dreamed of. And so that, I mean, also Obi-Wan is one of my favorite characters of Star Wars.
Sure.
So it's not hard to pick that one as your favorite, and plus Darth Vader being in it is just so cool. Um, I
That helps.
imagine you're gonna ask me now between like Ahsoka and Obi-Wan, which would be my favorite.
Yeah, you read my mind. That's where I was headed next.
Yeah, I think it's now it's a difficult choice because I think I worked so much harder on the Ahsoka edit than I did on the other movies that I re-edited. And I really do love Ahsoka as a character. So I think technically my Ahsoka edit is the best at like fan edit I've done so far. Just on a technical level, I think it's much more polished than the other ones. And I spent 10 months on it, so it was part of my life for a very long time and is going to be
Sure.
part of my life. So I think it's now it's a harder decision for me to make between Obi-Wan and Ahsoka. Um, I think I'm gonna give him a tie. Honestly, I'm gonna give him a tie.
Fair enough. Okay. So you said now you sat down for 10 months to work on Ahsoka, and this will lead me into the question I had earlier. Um, and it's been such a big part of your life, and each one of these films that you've put together, obviously very time consuming, very intricate. Because now one of the things that I have liked most about each one of your cuts, and I have watched them all, uh, I'm a fan. Uh, one of the things that I have appreciated about them is that you do have some reorganization of the story. You have taken some spots here, like this scene here, and you've moved it back here, and a couple different things like that. But one of the things that I've appreciated most about that your storytelling, and because when you now, and I say that your storytelling because you are retelling the story, you have modified the story, is that it's nothing that it's so glaring where I'm going, oh well, that doesn't belong there. That was at the beginning of the show. And a couple of the things that you've changed in the Ahsoka series, I honestly had to go back to the original. And I was like, I think that's different. I had to go find the episode and find the spot. One of the biggest things that caught me was the world between worlds scene.
Hmm.
And you made some pretty big changes there. Can you talk about that and why you decided to make the changes that you made there? Because you brought up Darth Vader, so I thought this would be a good spot to bring this in.
Yeah, yeah. I think the world between worlds section, and there's been some discourse online about what I did, especially because my trailers, I think, paint the picture as if I completely like took out the world between worlds and replaced it. But the world between worlds is still very much intact. I just
Correct.
have changed the end portion of their interaction. And the reason why I did that was early on, there were definitely some leaks that it was a potential that we were going to see, Ahsoka on Mustafar with Anakin or something like that.
Hmm.
And a lot of people started to like, have fan theories about why this would be and, an alternate timeline maybe. And
Right.
that got me very excited. And then I actually was able to secure a movie ticket. I think Fandango was doing like a fan event in LA. I think it was kind of around the country, but I'm in LA. And they were having people watch episode 5 of Ahsoka in theaters
Yes.
because they knew that that was going to be a huge thing because Hayden
Hmm.
Christensen was back and all that stuff. So I, my fiance and I went, and we almost did not make it. We were like, I think like one of the last two people that were let into the theater because it was already packed, and we waited in line for hours, and then we got in. And there was like only two seats way up in the front, so like I was seeing Anakin like the Oppenheimer meme, like yeah. So it was, but it was still an incredible experience, and like I'm so glad we were able to um, experience it on the big screen because I think that that really like felt different. Because after we came home, we watched it again just on my TV, and it didn't quite have the same impact. So I was really glad that I was able to see it on the big screen.
For sure.
But after seeing that episode, I was like, like that was really cool, but I felt like there was something missing. And at first
Hmm.
I was like, I wanted to have that last portion be on Mustafar. And my idea behind that was I was going to have, once Anakin is channeling Vader, I imagine this kind of like world between worlds force memories or visions that
Hmm.
Ahsoka was having might be something like the rules of like Inception, where like they're, you know, anybody that's in this dream is projecting their own,
Right.
realities into the dream world space. And so I figured if Anakin is now channeling Vader, wherever Vader goes, Mustafar comes with, because that's such a big part of his,
Yeah.
his life. He ended up
Sure.
creating a castle there, but that's where he really fell hard to the dark side and, had his last encounter with his mentor and best friend and brother. And so that's what I was going off of at first. I was like, I want to make this sequence in Mustafar as kind of like this dangerous experience for Ahsoka, and she can see kind of the darkness of her former master and then come to terms with that. But then when I did my announcement video that I was going to be doing the Ahsoka edit, there was a woman who commented and said, I don't think that the Mustafar thing makes a lot of sense because Ahsoka doesn't really have a connection to Mustafar. But Malachor from Rebels season 2 could be a really great setting for that. And I was a little bit in my ego of like, no, I think my idea is better. But then I was really thinking about it. I was like, you know what? Damn, it's true. Like, obviously, I think that my Mustafar idea had merits to it,
Oh, for
but
sure.
this movie is called Ahsoka, so like we want this to be about Ahsoka's
Hmm.
experience. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, damn, that's actually kind of the perfect bookend for her experience with this world between worlds section, because it kind of starts with their first missions in the Clone Wars, and then into the siege of Mandalore, and then the last thing, which would be from Rebels in Malachor, was when she actually had to face the idea that her master did become
Yeah.
Vader. And I kind of felt like she didn't emotionally recover from that, and this is something that's holding her back from
Hmm.
continuing and like being a good mentor. So I thought that that would be a perfect setting for this last moment where she has to overcome something and learn the lesson of fighting to continue. So that's where those ideas came from, and I think it's one of those things where now when I watch my movie version of it, I'm like, it feels like there's no other way it could have been.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know. It spoke a lot to me, and so that's why I included it.
No, I like that. And the reason I like the Malachor ending to the World Between Worlds section is because so in the show and even in your movie, she comes out of this as, I've made comparisons before to it being like Lord of the Rings, Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the
Hmm.
White. Here she is as Ahsoka the White. Like this whole, she's got different clothing on, her personality's different. So something striking had to happen for that to move forward. And I didn't feel that it was enough that she had met up with her former master and in the World Between Worlds. It wasn't enough to just have this bump in, this tie-in to us to Anakin, but to go through that and then to mourn his loss. I thought was a nice tie-in, and it allowed her character to move forward. I thought that was the impetus to help her move forward. So
Hmm.
I really did appreciate that change that you made there. Um, Now, we're talking about the changes to Ahsoka and why you felt that had to be done. Um, but there's other changes that you made as well. When we talked earlier about some of the sequential changes, what are some of the sequential changes, even if it's just a minor one, that you thought was a nice change to the storytelling?
Yeah, it's actually a pretty big difference in my movie and the show, but I completely cut out a whole section of story where the bad guys have the star map, or Ahsoka gets the star map, gives it to Sabine. Sabine's trying to open it, then it gets taken from her. Then the bad guys have the star map. All that. I cut that whole section out, but I still wanted, like, the beginning section where we have Balin break out Morgan Elsbeth from the security ship and stuff. So it actually worked out surprisingly well, where, you know, in my version, Ahsoka is already investigating different things that Morgan Elsbeth has kind of like left a trail
Mm-hmm.
behind of. And so I have Hu Yang say that they were already on their way to Corellia, and then Hera called them in to check out the scene of the crime. And then Hera and Ahsoka go to Corellia together, instead of it being after Sabine is stabbed and she's sitting in the hospital, and then now Ahsoka and Hera go off to Corellia. And I just feel like that flowed a lot better, because now we're kind of getting the gang back together slowly, and it has more of a significance on the relationship between Sabine and Ahsoka, because she's almost waiting to include her until she kind of has to, until she's like, all right, things have progressed a little bit further. Now I'm not just, following this trail of breadcrumbs, but now I've actually had to fight an inquisitor. I think it's time to bring on an apprentice to help. So that's kind of a huge thing, where, like, just taking out a section and moving things to a
Mm-hmm.
different place, like, changed the whole dynamic of the first quarter of the movie.
I Now this is another area where I was actually hoping this was the one you were going to reference, because uh so it's like you're reading my mind over. Good job.
It's the
But
Jedi mind trick.
there you go. Uh but the reason I liked that is because I honestly felt that the fight between Shin and Sabine was pointless. Having her get stabbed was pointless.
Mm-hmm.
Um and I mean, the fight was cool, don't get me wrong, but it was also kind of unnecessary in just as far as the storytelling, and it really didn't add anything to. We already knew that Sabine and Ahsoka weren't on good terms, and we already knew that they weren't exactly, a-okay with each other. So having that uncomfortable scene in the hospital really didn't help
Mm-hmm.
any of the storytelling. And so I do like that we go from we kind of get rid of all that, and we go right to Balin having the map, and they're setting it up, and then Sabine has her opportunity to intervene, and she does what she does. And
Mm-hmm.
so I thought that was one of those things where we kind of like when I look back at the Obi-Wan series, where like we needed to know that little Leia got chased and that she got abducted. We didn't need to see it all. We
Right.
already knew that Ahsoka and Sabine had a frayed relationship. We didn't need to see it all leading up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
So, and all the things that kind of went with that. So I do like that, and I thought that was kind of a nice change. But so one of the other things I want to give you a little bit of a pat on the back about is I love that you went with the old school lettering for the Ahsoka,
Oh
and
yeah.
that you improved the crawl and all these things. And that opening crawl, it's just, when I started up, I was like, because I know that there was a crawl to Ahsoka originally, but it looked much different, and it just felt, it's like, if you're going to put a crawl in, make it a Star Wars crawl, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
you did. You made it a Star Wars crawl. So it was kind of one of those things. I'll show you a picture here when we're done of my dog and I watching the Ahsoka. She was actually very enamored with it.
Oh
She
wow.
would,
Great.
yeah. You caught the attention of our pit bull. She was just, yeah.
Perfect.
So,
Yeah, I actually
um,
did have that in mind when I was editing. I was like, is this going to be interesting for pit bulls? And I'm glad that I got that through.
nailed it, 100%.
Yeah, the opening crawl one was an interesting thing, because I did like, the thing with my movies is that I really, really want you to feel like you're watching a Star Wars movie. And we all
Oh, for
know how
sure.
Star
Yeah.
Wars movies start, with
Hmm.
those opening crawls, and that really gets you in the mood, especially with the opening fanfare and everything. I will say that when I was watching the show, I thought that it was an interesting new take on, trying to like move past that format, but still like harken back to it.
Hmm.
Um, so I didn't mind it in the show, but again, I know that with my movies, I want you to have the Star Wars movie experience. So I didn't change that because I was like, oh, I didn't like it, or anything. I just changed it because I needed to get some extra information in there. I said that that Morgan had hired mercenaries to already find that map, and they already have the star map. So I wanted to get that whole like section done in the
Right.
opening crawl. So I did have to rewrite it, but also, I mean, opening with the classic fanfare and that opening crawl, it just gets you in that mood of watching a Star Wars movie, and I had to do it.
Oh, I agree. I went from okay, I need to sit down and watch this so I can talk with Kai about it too. Oh, it's a Star Wars movie. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely gets you right in that mindset and gets you ready, and gets you paying attention to what's happening, and helps you move forward. So you did a really good job on that. But yeah, and so um now we've talked about you as a filmmaker and on your website at Kai Patterson, KaiPattersonFilms.com, correct?
Hmm.
People can go there, they can check out your stuff. This is also where they can find the cuts of your films.
Hmm.
And as long as there's a disclaimer there for you guys to click. Please read through that disclaimer, it is very important. But there you also have several of your own shorts and some
Hmm.
other films on there that you have directed that people can take a look at. So what film or short on your website would you direct people to for your own films, not your fan edits, but your own films, to say, hi, I'm Kai Patterson, I made this?
Yeah, I think that would be my most recent short that I did last year, called "The Caligo Cuckoo," which was a Twilight Zone inspired short film,
Okay.
and I'm very, very proud of it. I love the performances that my actors gave me. I wrote and directed it, and I had my film partner Vince. He was the DP of it. Um, Great on camera, and then my other producer partner, Daisy Davis, she did a great job helping out with producing it and getting our location and everything. And yeah, it's just something I'm very proud of. And it's like the cautionary tale of wishing you were in somebody else's shoes. So
Okay.
that's yeah, it's a 15-minute short film, and it's one of my proudest achievements. So definitely go check that out if you have the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So were you a big fan of Twilight Zone? Is
Oh
that
yeah,
why you made that, or is it just
yeah. I would watch it all the time. Like my mom and I would watch it reruns all the time. Saturday mornings too. And
mm-hmm.
I just love that kind of storytelling of, Halloween is like my favorite time of year. So, I just love anything that gets you into that spooky vibe. So Goosebumps, always my favorite books to read
Sure,
as a
sure.
kid and stuff, and all Stephen King novels and everything. So I just kind of I love the spooky vibe. That's my vibe as well. I mean,
Okay.
maybe I'm not trying to be spooky as a person, but my
No,
content
no, I
sometimes is.
no, I kind of figured what you meant. But okay. And it's called the Caligo Cuckoo?
The Caligo Cuckoo, yes, and a
The
lot of people
Caligo,
ask
okay.
me why I came up with that title, and
Well,
upon
that was next.
reflection, I feel like I should have it had a different title because I know that it just looking at it, people don't really wanna talk about it because they don't really even know how to say it, which is detrimental to when you want people to be talking about your movie so that people watch it. But Caligo is like either a Latin or a Greek root for like darkness. And the if you watch my short, you'll understand my cuckoo bird reference. Basically, a cuckoo is a bird that lays its own, it like invades another bird's nest and kicks out that bird's eggs and puts its own eggs in that nest and has the other bird raise its young, basically.
Oh, interesting.
So I kind of use that concept in the short, that the main character's relationship is kind of like that. So,
All right.
and that's also the name of the bar that it takes place in. That's why I called it that.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I am curious. I also enjoyed Twilight Zone type stuff, Twilight Zone and the Alfred Hitchcock short,
Oh
all
yeah.
that stuff. So I'm curious. You have my attention for that one. All right, very good. All right, now I have one last question for you, and we call this our silly question. And I'm real actually, out of all the people that we've asked this question to, you have no one else has ever set it up as well as you did, and you did it so unknowingly, and that's the best part.
Amazing.
Yeah. Because you mentioned how much you love Jurassic Park and you wanted to be a paleontologist when you were younger. So our silly question is this: Kai Patterson, what's your favorite dinosaur?
Oh man. See, but this is even harder because I was a dinosaur freak for so long. Um, I always like to say Velociraptor is my favorite
Okay,
dinosaur, just because the sheer intelligence and well, we're not quite sure of their intelligence levels, but from Jurassic Park, they are the most
sure.
intelligent of the dinosaurs. And is that a little egotistical? Maybe I see myself in a velociraptor's intelligence. I don't know, but they didn't make it very far because of the comet. So they I feel like maybe I do resonate with them because they had so much potential, and didn't make it very far. And maybe I see myself in that idea.
Just avoid comments, you'll be okay.
Yeah. But I appreciate that question. I'm going to start asking other people that, because what a great
Well, yeah,
icebreaker.
right. Well, the reason why this came about, so Kathleen, our co-host, um, she has a 5-year-old daughter now, and somebody asked her daughter, but didn't ask her, and she's like, "Hey, I have a favorite dinosaur. Why don't you ask?" So at a certain point in age, people stop asking people, you know, or as
Yes.
Ben, our other co-host, calls it, the borification of being an adult. So
Well, Tim,
but
then what is your favorite dinosaur? I'm sure you've answered this a million times.
I have, but I'm also very willing to share it. It's the Triceratops. So
That's Steven Spielberg's favorite as well.
is it okay? I did
It
not know
is.
that. No, I always liked, and my reasoning for this, I still think it's sound, because when I was little, I always thought rhinos were cool because they had that one big
They
horn,
are cool.
or and it was like, it looked to me like a modern day dinosaur in my own head, and I'm like, man, they got that big horn, and Triceratops have 3 of them, so triple rhino, there we go. So yeah, and I
That's
just
a
kind of,
fair assessment, truly.
yeah, yeah, we just had uh Candy Milo on the show, and her interview comes out in just a couple days. Candy Milo is a voice actress from like
Mm.
Dexter's Laboratory. She's
Oh,
Dexter
nice.
from Dexter's Laboratory, and
Oh, incredible.
um, Cheese from Foster's Home, and a few other. Well, it's a few other. She's got a ton of other things out
Yeah,
there,
I'm sure.
but her favorite was the Stegosaurus, and there's no way I can duplicate it as funny as she said it. But she said that she liked the Stegosaurus because it was it attractive but dangerous with the tail. Something
That's
like that. I
also a
don't
great assessment.
I don't remember the exact way that she put it. But yeah. So
I think
if
I've
you
always
guys
just been more interested in the carnivores, just because for me that I'm like, oh, they're scary and cool.
right.
But I get a lot of people like the herbivores, so more power to you. And Steven Spielberg, that's why he added I think the first dinosaur that you really get a full view of, other than the Brachiosaurus,
Hmm.
is the Triceratops, where they actually built that whole animatronic. And I think it
Hmm.
was mostly because Steven Spielberg wanted to have a real Triceratops in the flesh that he could touch. So there you go.
Fair enough. I mean, hey, if you're making the money and the studio's paying for it, you're making the movie rather, and they're paying for it, might as well
Hmm.
get what you like. So all right. Well, Kai, thank you so much for being on the show today. Where can our listeners and viewers go to find out more about you and more about what you've got going on?
Yeah, I mean, basically everything is on my website, kaipattersonfilms.com. You can find my fan edits, my short films, everything that I've done. And on social media, I believe everything is at Kai Patterson Films as well. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Perfect. We'll make sure to put those links down in the show notes down below. That way everybody has an opportunity to go check those out. So guys, we want to remind you that subscribing is the single most important thing that you can do. It helps our show continue to grow, get great guests like Kai Patterson to come on and talk about their guest work and what they're doing. But go to kaipattersonfilms.com. You're going to want to watch these fan edits. They are amazing. And I'm not just saying that because Kai is here. I tell everybody that these are really, really good. And it's for me, it depends on how you like to watch Star Wars, but I watch it chronologically. So when it came time to watch the Ahsoka series, was when your edit came out. It was almost perfect. So I sat down and watched the Ahsoka series, and then I watched your movie right after it.
Oh wow.
So it was kind of a nice comparison. It was a lot of Ahsoka,
Yeah.
but yeah. So if you guys are watching it, it's kind of a nice comparison. Watch the Disney releases and then watch Kai's releases, and I guarantee you, you're gonna like his. So anyway, but yeah, and not just because it's taking it from a six to 8 episode thing to about a 2.5 hour movie, but just because it's a really solidly and nicely done piece. There's some brightening of colors. There's some amplification of audio, and things that are hard to hear in the Disney show are now nice and clear. I could go on and on and on, but just go to Kai Patterson Phil. Yeah, go to kaipattersonfilms.com. You won't be disappointed. All right, guys. Kai, thank you so much for being on the show. And guys, thank you for listening to the FSF podcast. That's all. Goodbye.
May the force be with you.
Copyright 2024 FSF Podcast. Reference to any specific product or entity mentioned on this podcast does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by FSF Podcast. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact us via email at info@fsfpodcast.com.